Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's session Trends in the Cyber Insurance Market Challenges and Opportunities. I'm Shilpa Goswami, and I'll be your host for the day. Before we get started, we would like to go over a few house rules. For our attendees, the session will be in listen only mode and will last for an hour, out of which the last 15 minutes will be dedicated to Q&A. If you have any questions during the webinar to organizers or our speaker, use the Q&A window. Also, if you face any audio video challenges, please check your internet connections or you may log out and log in again. An important announcement for our audiences. As a commitment to the closing the cybersecurity workforce gap by creating multi-domain cyber technicians, EC Council pledges $3.5 million towards CCT education and certification scholarship to certify approximately 10,000 cyber professionals ready to contribute to the industry.
Did you know that you can be part of the lucrative cybersecurity industry? Even top companies like Google, Microsoft, Amazon, IBM, Facebook, and Dell all hire cybersecurity professionals. The cybersecurity industry has a 0% unemployment rate. The average salary for an entry-level cybersecurity job is about $100,000 per year in the United States. Furthermore, you don't need to know coding and learn from your home, and you get a scholarship to kickstart your career. Apply now. EC Council is pledging a $3.5 million CCT scholarship for cybersecurity career starters. Scan the QR code on the screen to apply for the scholarship. Fill out the form.
If you want to know more, kindly visit our website given in the chat section. Also, we would like to announce to our audiences about the special handouts. Take the screenshot of the running webinar and post in your social media, LinkedIn or Twitter, tagging EC Council and hashtags CyberTalks. We will share free handouts to first 15 audiences. Now about our speaker, Cullina. He is the head of global cyber insurance business at TransUnion. He joined TransUnion in 2021 via the acquisition of Sontiq, an intelligent identity security company. Cullina is responsible for driving the global growth of TransUnion's comprehensive cyber solutions and strengthening strategic partnership throughout the insurance markets. He brings over 25-year experience in cyber services, insurance research, development, and claims management. Prior to Sontiq's acquisition of CyberScout in 2021, he served as Managing Director of Global Market at CyberScout. Before that position, he was the CEO of CyberScout from 2008 to 2018, and he helped to guide CyberScout's maturity from a single product business focused on US to developing a global footprint as they became the leading provider of personal and commercial cyber solutions to the insurance industry. With a rich background in the property casualty industry, he has held complex claims management roles at Travelers and Allianz. Additionally, he served as Director of Product Development for MetLife PNC company and was responsible for the product development and management of MetLife's personal lines offering. Without any further delay, I would hand over the session to you, Matt.
Thank you so much, Shilpa, and thank you, EC Council, for allowing me to speak to you all today. It's an honor. So I want to dive right into things. So today we're going to really talk about the cyber insurance market, but really, it's in the context of the overall insurance market. So for those of you who don't know too much about the market, the insurance market is one of the biggest markets in the world. It's a $6.5 trillion US market. And within that market, you have the cyber insurance market, which is a $14 billion market. It's the fastest growing segment of the insurance market today. And it's really only about 20 years old. It hasn't been around for very long, and it's evolving really rapidly. So what we're going to do today is next slide, we're going to dive into some of the trends that we're seeing. Pardon me, next slide, please. Next slide. So this is just, it's a little prior slide. I just want to give a quick update on Cyber Scout. Shilpa already gave a pretty big introduction around who we are, but I just wanted to point out, really what we do is work with insurance companies around the world. We're in about 28 countries these days, and we really focus on helping out small businesses with cyber solutions, as well as families and households. We currently cover about 50 million households around the world, with about 15 languages of experts providing support and service, and over 1 million small businesses. So we have a unique perspective in the cyber insurance space. Predominantly, the cyber insurance market serves corporates and large enterprise risks. Well, we tend to focus on the underserved classes of the market, which is really small business and families that really have very little to no protections. That's what this presentation is going to center around. Next slide. So really, this is just a quick overview of what we're going to cover today. We're going to really go into some kind of what's happened, emerging from the pandemic, how our risks have changed. We're going to show some unique research that TransUnion's done, trying to kind of understand consumer behavior and people's behavior around cyber risks. Then it's going to be a real high-level overview of cyber insurance and some of the claims trends we're seeing. And then some neat new solutions that could be offered to help prevent some of this risk. So without further ado, let's jump right in. Next slide. All right, so I mean, this is like unprecedented times. Coming out of the pandemic, the increase in attacks is just, more than we've ever seen. And so cyber attacks up over 50%. But what's happened is as our devices, as our networks have gotten more secure, where do the threat actors go? They target us as individuals. So people more and more are becoming a target, an entry point into systems, into access to personal data, private data, for threat actors to commit financial fraud. So as you see here, rather than trying to attack a system, if I go after an employee, I have a easier access point to try to manipulate them to get into the company's systems or into your personal accounts. 98% of all attacks use some sort of social engineering. So really, the people access point are the keys to the castle, and most often. The phishing attacks are just at an all-time high, and it's not just the volume of phishing attacks we're seeing, it's the sophistication. In the past, they were easy to detect. You kind of like rolled your eyes when you saw it. These days, it's almost identical to how you do business today. Your bank, it looks exactly like how your bank does business with you online, and there may be one little fraction of a change that you can't really detect, and you fall victim by clicking on a link. So phishing attacks are proving to be very successful, and threat actors just keep growing and growing their attacks. Next slide. So, really a key part of this story, especially because of the pandemic, is our over-reliance of being online all of the time. The averages are 7 hours per person on their mobile device, but if you added in all screen time, it's well over 11 hours. So nearly half of every day we spend in front of a screen. And in addition to that, we're buying more and more stuff for our homes that are connected devices. The average number of connected devices in a home today is 25. And that's grown 40% during the pandemic. So we're buying more and more all sorts of devices that are connected to make our lives easier, just to have more enjoyment in life, better, entertainment, etc. But obviously that increases the risk. In addition to kind of personal stuff, your work from home is increasing. So even coming out of the pandemic, still many of us, especially professional classes, are working remotely, and that causes a unique risk. So what are threat actors doing? They're changing their targets and coming into our homes, trying to get access through individuals. So the ransomware attacks are all-time high. Every year it gets more and more, every 11 seconds, and that just gets shorter and shorter every year, where we're just being pinged and pinged and pinged with ransomware attacks. Over 100 cyber security threats per family every month. So think about that, a barrage of all sorts of attacks that many of us don't even detect. And what businesses are saying is that 70% of businesses have suffered some sort of a breach or security incident because of the work from home situation that they're really forced to, to do business that way because of the pandemic. Next slide. Next slide. So in addition to that, I mean, if you think as an individual or a family that your data isn't out there, then you're sadly mistaken. These are just the public breaches that are reported. We handle hundreds of breaches every month that don't even make the press, but these are the big ones. 17.2 billion records exposed. That's, every type of personal information about you, your name, your date of birth, all sensitive financial account numbers and information, even health records, things of that nature. All of this is out there in the dark web. And what threat actors do is they put it up for sale, right? They're trying to monetize all of their activity. And this just shows you kind of like the overwhelming amount of exposed data there is out there. And this just increases every day. Next slide. Next slide. So what we've done is this, we did a bunch of research. So we're going to get into research now around what we've done, trying to understand where consumers are at around cyber risk. And this is interesting in that it tries to create a persona of a Gen Z couple. And what Gen Z folks have told us is that they're 35%, way above the average, have been victimized or even involved in a security incident. And almost 60% change their behaviors, change their information online, fake their personas online in order to try to stay secure. Deloitte just came out with a survey this week around cyber trends, and what they found is that Gen Z folks are 3 times more likely to be victimized than a baby boomer. And you may think, well, a Gen Z person is a digital native. They were grown up online, whereas a baby boomer just, technology advanced during their life and they became a late bloomer or a digital immigrant to all things digital. But really what you see with Gen Z folks is that you're always online, you're always on social media, you're intermingling social media with buying behaviors. And because of that, you're more and more of a target. And as a result, you're more and more of a victim for fraud. Next slide. So this is a real life case of a person that works for us that is the Gen Z generation, and they just went shopping in the U.S. to a local department store called Kohl's. They didn't share any of their personal information with Kohl's. They just went and bought a few items, paid with a credit card, didn't have any accounts set up, went home. By the time they got home, they started getting all sorts of phishing and spam attacks. And within 24-hour period, they had 9 different attacks coming from what looked just like Kohl's, trying to solicit them to click on a link, which inevitably would have exposed them to malware or some other type of data intrusion. And if you look closely at their email, the from and to lines, there's slight differences to show that technically it wasn't coming from Kohl's, but all of the marketing mirrored what Kohl's had done. So it just shows you the growing nature and sophistication of these types of attacks, that this would just feel like a natural thing that happens after you've just been in the physical store, when as a result somebody was tracking your behavior and impersonated Kohl's to try to get you to make bad decisions. Next slide. So we asked folks, trying to really understand if the average person really understood their risk to cyber risk. And what this showed us is that there is a growing sophistication around people really starting to understand the different types of scams that happen, from phishing to smishing to vishing, and concerns around their risks. But it's not just a concern around their data being exposed. If you see on the right-hand side, they're hyper concerned around financial fraud and all sorts of different types of financial fraud. So it really shows you that the average person is really kind of getting more in the know around what the risks are, not for just being exposed, but for being victimized. Next slide. So this is like a really crucial question we ask. We're trying to figure out, where do people go or think they should go for cyber protection? And the number one thing people say is they really don't know. 38% say they really don't know where to turn, but quickly followed by, I'm going to go to my insurance company for protection at 31%. And if you think about it, insurance is risk protection. It's meant to protect you against all sorts of harms and risks. Since cyber is such a fast growing risk, it makes sense that they would want their insurance company to step up and provide some sort of solution for it. It's really followed by their bank. You know, you think that's where your accounts are kept that could be exposed, and then your employer. But those last two categories, if you think about it, are just focused on one thing. They're not really focused on your whole risk landscape in your home or your family or small business. It's just, you know, their relationship with you for that specific thing they do for you. So again, logical that the insurance industry would be where consumers would want to turn for cyber solutions. Next slide. So we drilled into it. We said, okay, well, you know, what are you most concerned about? And if you just click one more time, you'll see that, you know, people have a really pretty growing sophistication in what their risks are. Only 19% said they're not concerned, nothing's going to happen to them. But you know, overall, people understand that if their PII gets exposed, that opens them up to financial fraud. There are concerns of all different types of financial fraud stemming from cyber risk, and they're also concerned about things like cyberbullying. So kind of reputation risk when it comes to being online, your reputation being dragged through the mud because of a threat actor's activity, impersonating you or your family member, or you know, picking on your kids, etc. So again, it shows the growing sophistication that people have around cyber risk. Next slide. So this is going to be a busy slide, but just wanted to show you guys kind of like what is really cyber insurance. So cyber insurance is not just the insurance product itself. There's actually 4 components that come with cyber insurance products. They're very sophisticated in that they're trying to help businesses and families get on top of this risk. And because this risk is so intangible, because it's really not a physical risk, they're trying all different ways to educate with pre-loss services, providing tools, technology, expert support to help you get your arms around the risk and better protect yourself and your business and your family. The coverages themselves, if you can see on the left-hand side, this is just a range of the different types of insurance coverages there are. So all sorts of coverage for ransomware, for financial fraud, for data breaches, for system compromises, for your devices, you know, breaking down because of the threat actor attack. Even for things like, you know, your lost profits as a small business, if you're taken down by a ransomware attack and you can no longer operate for that period, it'll pay you for the amount of money that you lost in that time frame. So really robust insurance, but it followed closely by expert services, 24/7 cyber services that are available to you if you have an event. So think about this not just like insurance and submitting a claim, it's also a hotline when you have concerns, problems, or you know, you're not really sure what's going on in your environment and you need help from an expert. In addition to that, there's all sorts of analytics that are happening around cyber risk today, incorporated into the insurance buy. So the way we look at it is it's tending to be a very holistic package, of a broad package that's meant to cover a variety of things to protect you against the loss, to cover you in case something bad happens, to provide expert support no matter what happens, and to get you smarter around the risk itself. So you're ready for the next one to come. You're kind of keeping up with the trends that are happening in cyber risk. Next slide. So we then asked, you know, folks, what are they looking for? What is their top thing that they're seeking in any type of a cyber insurance product? And number one, by far, even more than the insurance itself, people wanted that crisis response, that expert support, the cavalry to come charging in and help save you from whatever event you're dealing with. And honestly, it makes sense. What we found in our own work is that 76% of the time, you know, if you are hit with an event and you don't have support, you're going to spend 76% more than people that have experts ready for when that event happens. So having a game plan, being ready, having protection like cyber insurance, really, even if you are hit with a serious attack, it helps you recover so much more quickly and save money while you're doing it. Next slide. So now we're going to get into claims trends. So these are actual claims trends from our claims center. We have a claims team that works around the world on cyber claims. And if you looked beyond 2022, from 2021 and 2020, 2019, what we found is ransomware was the #1 type of claim we saw, hands down. It was top of the list. And you talk to any cyber insurance company, they would say the same. All of a sudden in 2022, and many think it's because of the Ukrainian war and all of what's happening there, ransomware went down, way down. And so you see the drop in the first covered box here. Ransomware went from about 30% of claims down to 10. And at the same time, social engineering claims have surged. And so that hasn't slowed down whatsoever, even into 2023. Social engineering claims are now more than half of all the claims we see. So again, they're targeting individuals to get access to business, to families, systems, accounts, etc. Ransomware, we are seeing an uptick in ransomware again in 2023, but nowhere near the numbers that we saw a few years ago. So social engineering is the risk we're trying to solve for today. It is the #1 issue that we see, and we don't see any slowdown. It's growing as fast as you can see the statistics here, just overwhelming growth over the last few years, and no ebb in sight. Next slide. So this is just another view of our claims. So in the left hand, you see our claims for families, what we've done to help families over the last few years. And on the right hand side is our exposure with small businesses. And really what this graph is meant to show is that expert support is critical. So what we found, if you have that 24/7 expert support and you call in with an event, you're 95% of the time with families, we're able to solve the event without financial fraud happening. On the business side, we're able to really step in and fix about 40% of the issues before any expense is happening to a business, before any out-of-pocket or fraud is happening to the business. So again, it's really a best practice no matter what you do, whether you have insurance or not. If you have a crisis, to have somebody to call that'll help you through it is the best medicine in all of this. Early detection is critical. What we find is that without that, things tend to snowball. The threat actor sees that they can take advantage of a situation, and they'll just keep taking advantage until somebody tries to stop them. Next slide. So what we're going to get into is just 3 really quick case examples of actual claims that we've handled. So this is an electrical supplier, small business, and this is very common. Social engineering, a threat actor broke into their system and started impersonating a manufacturer that they used to buy supplies from all the time, right? So it was not seen as an issue. They just thought they were dealing with the business that they've always dealt with. The threat actor had a request for payment in an average amount that was not an alarm bell wouldn't be set off. And so in this case, they spent $76,000 US before they realized, oh my goodness, this isn't the manufacturer that I normally do business with, this is a threat actor. So this is an extremely common type of loss that we see. Again, the threat actor gets to know you, they get to understand how you do business, and they manipulate you, acting like folks that you're used to doing business with every day. Next slide. So this is a second example of a social engineering scam, but it's against an individual. In this case, unfortunately, it's a widow who from Canada who started online dating and She had somebody that was claiming to want to move to Canada, had all of these imports that they wanted to bring into the country, but had to pay all of these taxes and duties to the Canadian government in order to get their goods into Canada. Unfortunately, the widow fell for this, and she paid out her whole retirement savings fund, $235,000 Canadian, to this person before she realized that it was all a big fake. So it just shows you they try to get you where you're least vulnerable. You're most vulnerable, like where you're weak. You know, in this case, she thought she was building a relationship, and lo and behold, she's dealing with a threat actor on the other end who drained her accounts. Next slide. So this last one is really about small businesses, and this is about 60 dental offices in the U.S. So different dental offices, independent businesses, they were all using the same software to manage their dental patients, activity, etc. And that software had not been patched and basically allowed for ransomware attacks to go out to their customers. And so we started dealing with all of these dentists calling in asking for help, and our cyber team realized that there was a common thread in all of this. And so we started asking, what type of operating software are you using? Found out it was from the software firm, contacted that software firm, and we found that they were really the point of the threat actor getting access to all these dental practices. Unfortunately, there was a ransomware demands on each and every dental practice, and so there's a lot of losses here because of that. But it just shows you that a kind of a common vendor could lead to a huge amount of case activity, a huge amount of incidents, if they're not protecting their software or their customers' data. Next slide. So, well, I don't want to go too much into this, but just quickly, if those of you are familiar with how the internet works, it really is controlled by this domain name system, which is like the internet's phone book. So every time you click a link, you get to where you need to get in a nanosecond. But what's really happening is that query is being pinged against all sorts of databases and networks to determine whether, to get to where you want to get. About 70,000 new websites are created every day around the world, and 86% of them are fraudulent. So what you see is the threat actors just keep escalating. Every day they're creating new sites, trying to direct you to those sites, click on bad links. And it's all because of the way the internet is built. It makes it easy for them to navigate and do this over and over again. So by the time we catch up with them, they're already on to the next site and the next site and the next site. And really, that's a key issue for why social engineering exists, and why there's such a proliferation of data breaches and data exposure. Next slide. So what we then did is we really looked to, what are corporations doing to protect customer data? If you think about it, the big corporations, enterprises, public companies, they are investing more and more money into cybersecurity. You'd ask any major CEO or board member, and they'll say cyber risk is a top 3 risk, if not the #1 risk they face as a business. And so you see in the left-hand column, it's just general cybersecurity best practices that are put in place today that nearly every big company employs. What we're going to highlight today is the protective DNS, or protective domain name system, which is a way to filter out fraudulent sites, from your employees getting access to those fraudulent sites. Next slide. So what, as a company, what we're trying to move to is what types of solutions out there can we bring to market that helps try to prevent the growing impact of social engineering scams. So this is just another survey questions we asked of the average person. It's high concern, 87% concerned about cyber risk. They have a lot of confidence in their insurance company, and nearly 40% have submitted cyber insurance claims to their insurance company, cyber incidents. So whether they're covered or not, they're trying to basically reach out to their insurance company to say, can you help? So if you turn to the next slide. So really what we're finding is that if by taking those corporate tried and true solutions and trying to get them down to the average person, the average small business like protective DNS, we really can stave off a huge amount of losses and incidents. Nearly 90% of malware infections can be avoided with a protective DNS solution. So if we all have that filter, on our smartphones, it makes us even more, basically protected against all sorts of social engineering threats, whether they be phishing attempts, phishing attempts, you name it. And every new fraudulent website that gets created every day gets basically knocked down by a protective DNS system. So it's really a protective solution that we think fits kind of where we are today with the rise in social engineering scams. So final slide. So really in summary, wanted to give you an overview of the landscape of where we're at in the cyber risk world and how our attackable surface has increased. We all are doing more online, have more devices, more exposed. And followed by that, and all of our research is showing that social engineering is at an all-time high, but people's sophistication and knowledge of cyber risk is also growing. If you asked me 5 years ago, I would say that most people had their head in the sand. They didn't really think about cyber risk. They weren't really that concerned. Now everybody knows somebody who's been victimized, if they haven't been victimized themselves. Everyone's been exposed by a data breach. Our data is out there. And so really, I think the average person is getting smarter and smarter about protecting themselves and are trying to find ways to protect themselves through insurance and other ways. And then finally, we really think that these corporate cybersecurity solutions can be brought to the masses and brought to the masses of small businesses and families that are really underprotected today when it comes to cyber protection. So with that, I want to thank you for your time, and I'll turn it back to Shilpa to start managing the Q&A.
Thank you very much, Matt, for such an insightful session, and it was really very, very informative. That was a really interesting webinar, and we hope it was worth your time too. Now, before we begin with the Q&A, I would like to inform all the attendees that the session is in sync with EC Council certification ECIH, EC Council Certified Incident Handler maps to Incident Handler or Incident Manager role. Anyone with the ECIH certification is eligible for 17,000 plus jobs on LinkedIn globally with an average salary of $73,676. If you are interested to learn more about our programs, kindly take part in the poll that's going to be conducted now. Let us know your preferred mode of training and we will reach out to you soon. Matt, shall we start with the Q&A?
Yes, that would be wonderful.
Okay. So our first question is, what are the parameters to be considered before applying for a cyber insurance for an organization, and which insurance companies do offer a cyber insurance?
It's a great question. Thanks for asking. So really, whether you're a small business, a medium-sized business, a family, a large business, when you're going into this type of buying situation for cyber insurance, you want to get your house in order. And generally speaking, especially for business cyber insurance, the application process is pretty extensive, and it reads almost like a cybersecurity exam. It really gets into the basics of how are you protecting your networks? Are your employees trained? What type of access do they have? How secure is that? Do you use multi-factor authentication? And do you have VPNs in place? And have you had a cyber event in the last 5 years? And so it really is a deep dive into trying to understand. If you think about the insurance industry, they basically make their money off of risk, right? So they want to know as much as possible about your individual risk for cyber events. They also know about your business and other businesses like you. So they compare you against your peers in whatever market that you're in and say, okay, do they have the same or better cybersecurity in place than their peers? and your insurance is priced based on how that application process works and how risky you are compared to your competitors and your peers. For cyber insurance carriers, there's so many different markets. There's over 80 to 100 markets where you can buy cyber insurance from. So I don't want to name one insurer over the next, but every major brand in the insurance world has a cyber division, and there's lots of local insurance companies in your world that also offer cyber that you should look at. So I'm not saying just pick the big companies. But if you look at the top 50 insurers in the world, every one of them has a cyber insurance program. And what we found is country by country where we do business, even the insurance company that you would buy auto insurance from, let's say, or home insurance from, is now starting to offer cyber insurance as well. So I would check online, or if you do have an agent or a broker, call them, and they should be able to provide you with a list of quality brands.
Thank you, Matt, for answering that question. Our next question is, can cyber insurance be obtained for a personal data? For example, theft of personal bank account or loss occurs due to digital identity, impersonation, etc.
Another good one. So yeah, so they call it family cyber insurance or personal cyber insurance. It's the newest type of cyber insurance. It's only been around for about 5 years or so, and so this is what we're seeing. It's the fastest growing type of cyber insurance that we see, and really the pandemic helped supercharge these new coverages being offered. So again, if you check with your local insurer around whether they have cyber insurance, it may be available or coming to you soon. Also, what we found is we work with a lot of non-insurance companies to launch personal cyber insurance. So a lot of like your mobile company may be offering cyber insurance as an add-on feature to you being a customer. Your bank may even want to offer you cyber insurance. So we're seeing all sorts of different types of companies that you do business with every day so concerned about cyber risk that they want to bring cyber insurance solutions to you. So, I would do your research. If it's not out there today, it should be coming soon. We literally see it growing on every continent. So we don't see any area of the world where this type of insurance isn't growing, isn't being offered.
Thank you, Matt. Our next question is, especially small and medium enterprises or businesses are having less budget. How can they get low budget cyber insurance, or like to know your suggestion for this SME or SMB companies?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this is the key part of the equation, right? Any type of insurance has to be affordable, or otherwise people are just going to ignore it and not buy it. And so really the way that cyber insurance is made affordable for the average small business is that, all of the range of coverages that you can buy for a large corporate are available for small businesses, but they're usually available at much smaller limits. So if you're a large corporation, maybe you have 20 or 30 or $50 million in cyber insurance. So if you have a loss, you have up to that amount to spend on recovering from that loss. When it comes to smaller businesses, you can buy cyber insurance with, and this is all USD, $50,000 worth of insurance, $100,000 worth of cyber insurance. So because of that lower limit, and because you're a small business that usually is a lower risk for cyber events than the large company, you pay less. So we even see some introductory cyber insurance offerings for small business at less than $100 USD. And so shop around, it's out there. You may have to knock on a few doors to get there, but most of the cyber insurance we've seen for small business is meant to be something that the small business can afford.
Thank you, Matt, for answering that question. Our next question is, how to ensure that we are dealing with the correct DNS system?
Yeah, it's not necessarily the system. It's really the URLs and the websites that get generated that are fraudulent. As I said earlier, 86% of all websites that get started every day are fraudulent. often it's super hard to detect, but it's all about, as people, our curiosity tends to take over when we see some sort of offer or click on this link. One big fraud trend we're seeing right now is threat actors impersonating your bank and sending you a text message that says your account has just been compromised. Click here and reset your password. And what you're doing is you're clicking on a threat actor site and you're putting in your PIN and password so that they can then misuse it. And so normally what we say is just take a pause and read the fine print and look at that link, because generally that link will have something in it that's fictitious. So let's say it's a 0 instead of an O, and that one little difference. We had one, the biggest bank in the US is called Bank of America, and we had a scam going on where it said a bad link, bankofamerica.com, but the O in .com was a 0. And so it was hard to detect. You really had to look at it closely before you found out what it was. So I think if more due diligence on what you're clicking on, first of all, but there are, protective DNS solutions out there. And what they do is they literally, even if you click on that bad link, it protects you. It just shuts it down because it's already detected that that site is fraudulent. So there's solutions out there for that. But due diligence as the average person, I think, is paramount.
Thank you, Matt, for answering that question. Our next question is actually, we have lots and lots of questions for you. So just trying to take few of them at least. Okay,
No
so
problem.
our next question is how to start cybersecurity career for beginners.
That's a really good question. I mean, if you think about it, in our world, obviously we're a cyber risk company. We have a lot of cyber experts, incident responders, all sorts of backgrounds. They may have started their career doing something entirely different. They may have gotten a cybersecurity degree and went right into the workforce looking for a cyber job. But if you think about it, the average person may not think about when they're thinking about a cybersecurity career, for example, they may not think about cyber insurance or the insurance market. The insurance market, this old market, like what does that have to do with cyber? They're hiring like crazy cyber experts, and because of that, there's so many vendors that provide all sorts of cybersecurity forensic work, data analytics, that they're hiring to help make their offerings more robust. So just one example that, in addition to the large corporates offering, having whole cyber divisions protecting security, governments having whole divisions protecting cybersecurity and hiring cyber experts, we see it in universities, whole new coursework around cybersecurity starting out at all the major universities. And so there's personnel needs there. Companies all need cybersecurity people. It's the fastest growing job, at least in the US, that we see. And what you'll find in most countries is that there's not enough people for the jobs that are available. And so in the US alone, they're claiming that there's like 2.5 million job openings for cybersecurity experts that they can't fill. So, it really is a buyer's market. It's a market for anybody that's looking to get into cybersecurity. Specifically, the folks that we hired, just to give you an example, for our own company, we recruited right out of college, right out of university while they were still in university, had them, with paid internships, and then that converted to full-time work. So, to get your foot in the door, to get started, an internship is something I'd highly recommend. And you'd be surprised, again, once you start looking around, how many different types of businesses are looking for cybersecurity experts.
Thank you, Matt, for answering that question. Our next question is what key reasons and measurements to convince the board to take cyber insurance?
Yeah, this is a tricky one, and it's a ongoing, because for large corporations, if you have a board, a public company, whatever, cyber insurance is expensive and it's hard to buy because, again, they ask a lot of questions about your cybersecurity. I would say that it's for a company not to have cyber insurance today, especially a larger company. I think it's almost like a risk beyond anything they should be considering. It should be a top 3 risk for the organization. So the question should be what type of cyber insurance I should buy versus if I should buy. But what we found is at corporate level, there's been, probably 40–50% penetration of corporates buying cyber insurance, and to a lesser degree as you move down in size as a small business. But the number one thing I would say is, if you were attacked, if you had an incident, first of all, your reputation is at stake, right? If you expose your employees' data, your customers' data, and it's seen that you did it without any protection, like you didn't do enough to protect them, now you have to deal with that as a business. But what we find more and more, especially with ransomware attacks, your business can't function as a business. I'll give you an example. It just happened this past month. Those of you, are you familiar with Caesars and MGM Grand, the 2 major casinos in Las Vegas? Both of them were attacked by a fraud ring called Scattered Spider. Both of them got shut down. Caesars ended up paying a $15 million ransomware demand to get their systems back up. MGM didn't. MGM couldn't operate as a casino for 2 weeks. They couldn't, their hotel room key locks didn't work. So they completely could not operate as a business because of that cyber attack. And that cyber attack at MGM was caused by a threat actor impersonating one employee. They were impersonating a senior executive. They called into the IT help desk at MGM and said, "Hey, I can't get into my laptop. I need my password reset." And the IT help desk gave over the credentials to the threat actor, and that's how they got in the door. So it's just an example. Like, most people don't think that business interruption is a big deal. We see that as the biggest deal for large corporates. So what would you do to replace that money you lost during that time period where you couldn't operate? Cyber insurance is the surest way to get reimbursed for that type of exposure.
Thank you, Matt, for answering that question. We'll take last 2 questions for the day. So our next question is it true current insurance companies require a high level of security requirements? Also, in which cases or type of cybersecurity incidents apply this type of policies and the coverage they provide?
Yeah, like I showed before, I mean, there's a range of coverages that are offered, and it really covers every aspect of cyber risk. There really aren't any gaps in the modern cyber insurance policy as to what's covered and what events would be protected against. There's some issues like Bitcoin, like maybe the insurance company won't reimburse you for Bitcoin because that's not an official currency that they would pay claims on. But for the event types, most of the time those events are covered. If there's a threat actor involved, that's from a rogue nation or a rogue state, negotiating with that threat actor and paying them maybe against the law in your country. So there could be some issues that way while a claim wouldn't be paid. But to your original question, generally speaking, as I said earlier, it is like a cybersecurity audit when you're buying cyber insurance. That insurance company wants to get to know what you're doing to protect against cyber risk. And they'll provide you helpful tools. They'll even pay for a consultant to help you analyze your environment. So they will try to kind of help you get a leg up on cybersecurity, but they are going to scrutinize, what your environment's like and how risky you are. And that's how you're going to be priced for the insurance itself.
Thank you, Matt. Our last question for the day. What should companies consider when calculating the value for their cyber insurance?
Again, it's really protecting your assets, protecting your reputation, and it's a balance of, okay, if I didn't have cyber insurance, what would I do? So you have to picture yourself in this catastrophic, hack. You're a threat actor, has seized all of your networks, and you have a skull and crossbows on the screen, and it says you have 48 hours to pay $10 million in this ransomware demand, or we're not only going to destroy all of your data, we're going to expose it to the public so the public can see all your company secrets. That's an average claim that we see. So it sounds scary, but literally that's what happens every day. So if you think you can protect against that as a business without cyber insurance, then you must have very deep pockets. You must have really, really strong backup and storage and like the best cybersecurity going. Because these days, every company that's even investing hundreds of millions of dollars in cybersecurity buys cyber insurance. So it's really become a core best practice, I believe, for any business to really investigate what type of cyber insurance fits for them. So I think it's beyond should I buy, it's what should I buy when it comes to cyber insurance.
Thank you again to our wonderful speaker, Matt, for answering those questions and for the great presentation and knowledge shared with our global audiences. It was a pleasure to have you with us, and we are looking for more and more sessions with you. Before we conclude the webinar, Matt, we would like to give a small message to our audiences.
No, just thank you for the questions. It's great to see the interaction, and thanks to the EC Council for allowing us to speak. It's our pleasure, absolute our pleasure. And if you have any additional questions of us, more than happy to have you reach out.
Thank you so much, Matt. Now, before we end the session, I would like to announce our next Cyber Talk session. Holistic cybersecurity strategy integrating pen testing and forensics for CISO's decision making, which is scheduled on October 9th. This session is an expert presentation by Dr. Adil, CISO at Exitium. To register for this session, please do go and visit our website www.eccu.cybertalks. The link is given in the chat section. Hope to see you all on October 9th. With this, we end the session. You may now disconnect your lines. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much, Matt.
Bye-bye, Shilpa. Have a good night. Bye-bye.
Have a good day. Yeah. Bye-bye. Pleasure having you.